Chapter 18.
Don't look so scared,
he said, flashing me 2 rows of jagged, rotting teeth.
I only want to play.
A chill shot down my spine. My eyes darted in search of someone, anyone nearby. But we were alone. He, equally aware of this, advanced until he had me backed against the wall.
Grayson's been keeping you all to himself,
he said, another step accompanying his words.
That hardly seems fair. A pretty thing like you shouldn't be wasted on someone like him.
The space between us grew rapidly smaller. Terror had a firm grip on me, weighing my legs down so much that I wasn't certain I could move them. Still, as he drew ever closer, a burst of adrenaline energized me for long enough to try to sprint past him. His arm whipped out, colliding with my stomach. I was yanked sharply backwards, the breath knocked clean from my lungs as he dragged me into his chest. I managed a strangled cry of fear and protest, twisting my body in an effort to escape. But he had me pinned. He leaned over my shoulder and sneered into my ear, a taunting. His breath burned as it crawled down the back of my dress, assaulting my nose with the stink of cheap rum.
You're not going anywhere.
I opened my mouth again, hoping to scream, hoping to attract some kind of help. But the sound lodged in my throat when his free hand snaked around my neck.
Why don't you order my bed tonight? I pay well. You can ask any of the girls here.
It wasn't a suggestion. That much was clear from the way his fingers dug against my throat, not quite hard enough to choke me, but an implicit reminder of how quickly he could squeeze the life from me all the same. My heart threatened to climb out of my chest as his mouth came perilously close to my collarbone. A dry sob worked its way out of me, and the hallway started to spin. Then, an abrupt slam brought it to a halt. Pounding footsteps. All at once, Nathaniel's grip vanished, and I was thrown forward. I only barely managed to break my fall with my hands, and looked over my shoulder to see Grayson, who had appeared as if from nowhere, shoving Nathaniel backwards.
Oi, settle down,
Nathaniel said, a sinister smile still playing across his face.
No need to get rough. I was only having a bit of fun.
She's off limits. I warned you to keep your filthy hands off of her.
Didn't take you for the type to get so attached to a whore,
he said, with an insolent grin. He took a step forward, and I couldn't help but mark the size difference between them. Nathaniel was taller by only a few inches, but suddenly that seemed like all he would need to barrel his way past Grayson. I scrambled to my feet, hoping I could be fast enough to run for the room and shut the door before Nathaniel reclaimed any more distance. But he made it no further. One blink, and there was a pistol in Grayson's hand. A second blink, and it was raised and pointed directly at Nathaniel's forehead. Nathaniel stopped in his tracks.
Off limits,
Grayson repeated, voice low. The silence that followed was long and deafening. Their eyes remained locked for what felt like eons, an invisible battle of attrition, leaving me afraid to breathe in case it tipped the scales. I watched Nathaniel's expression cycle, surprise, confusion, then disbelief.
You wouldn't,
he said finally. The sound of Grayson cocking the pistol echoed, removing any doubts either of us may have had about his sincerity. I wondered briefly if I should run after all, to avoid witnessing whatever might happen next. but I wasn't sure I could make myself move. Nathaniel stared down the barrel of the gun for a few more moments, and then broke into a bewildered laugh.
Always so serious. Fine. Keep your pretty whore.
I relaxed my shoulders when he stepped back and turned to leave, only to be frozen again when he eyed me over his shoulder, piercing me with a wolfish stare. Grayson didn't even wait for him to be out of sight before he whirled and seized me by the wrist, leading me past my room and to another one further down the hall without a word. The door closed behind us with a slam.
Was something I told you the other day unclear? Did I not explicitly tell you that you were not to open your door unless you heard me knock?
Slowly, I faced him, opening my mouth to explain myself, but he swiftly cut me off.
You know what? I don't care. Whatever it is, I don't care.
He moved past me, tucking the pistol into his belt and shoving hair back from his forehead with a groan.
Bloody hell.
Out of instinct, I turned my eyes to the floor and caught sight of my own shaking hands. Why were they shaking? Unconsciously, I reached up to rub at the side of my neck where Nathaniel's mouth had lingered, only inches away from my skin. The spot still burned. Finally, Grayson looked at me again, the corners of his mouth fixed into that stony frown that I saw so often now. I wanted to fire a retort back at him, snap at him, say something. But all I could think about was what might have happened if he hadn't appeared at that moment. There was a sting manifesting at the backs of my eyes, strong enough to cut through the numbness that had been threatening to take me over. It took a moment to register that Grayson was still scolding me.
Are you listening?
He demanded.
Have you completely lost your mind? Do you have any idea what...
I couldn't stop, even if I had tried. Tears rolled down my face, and Grayson's lecture came to an abrupt halt. Cheeks flushing, I turned my head to the side, as if I could somehow maintain a shred of dignity in doing so. Though I knew it was too late. The tears fell faster than I could possibly contain them, slipping from beneath my lashes and streaking all the way down to my chin. They were almost as hot as the blood beneath my cheeks. I squeezed my eyes shut, but that only seemed to make it worse, and I was forced to clench my teeth in order to stifle an uninvited sob. There was a prolonged, awkward silence. I couldn't look at Grayson for fear of losing what little composure I had left, but staring at the ground offered me little reprieve. The ghostly sensation of his fingers, thick and calloused, and ready at any moment to cut off my airflow entirely, refused to fade. The taunts he'd hissed cycled endlessly in my ear, like a cruel song that had lodged itself into my head. Grayson still hadn't said anything. Why hadn't he said anything? The floorboards creaked softly as he shifted his weight backwards. From my peripheral, I caught the movement of his hand running through his hair again.
All right,
he said finally. The sharpness in his voice was gone, replaced with the much softer, halfway comforting tone.
Let me get you something to drink. Stay here.
Grayson brushed past me and threw open the door again. I heard the lock turn after he pulled it closed. It might have annoyed me a few days ago. Now, it made me feel secure. Swallowing, I finally looked up, rubbing furiously at my eyes to try and stem the flow of tears. I surveyed the room, the edges of my vision still blurry. It was much like the room in which I had spent the past several weeks, and was presumably where Grayson had been staying based on the clothes that were strewn about. My eyes landed on the bed, where the pillows laid in a state of gentle disarray, with the covers thrown over top of them, a lazy attempt at making the bed. Without fully thinking about it, I sat on the edge of the mattress, trying to control my breathing, and forcing my hands to uncurl so that I could wipe the sweat from my palms. It certainly wasn't the first time a man had made unwanted advances on me, I reminded myself. Once some men heard that the Admiral's daughter had a reputation for being loose, they'd deemed it acceptable to treat me as if I were a common whore. But this had never been something I couldn't handle. A few threats of retribution from my father usually sent them running. If not, a good kick in the shins often did the trick. That wouldn't have served me here. In fact, I had a feeling that had I tried to kick or hit him, my situation would have only worsened. A wave of exhaustion crashed over me without warning. My entire body felt heavy, as though I'd just sprinted a mile, even though I'd spent the past few days doing quite the opposite. Still trying to catch my breath, I eased backwards on the bed, clenching my hands around fistfuls of the rough, threadbare sheets until my fingers ached. My eyelids drooped. Grayson had said he was getting me a drink. Had he meant water or something stronger? I wasn't sure which one I was hoping for. So tired. Strange how my heart had been racing a mile a minute just a short while ago, and now I could hardly keep my eyes open. This wasn't my bed, however. Some part of my brain remembered that. But Grayson was taking a long time. Perhaps it wouldn't hurt to just close my eyes for just one moment. I had barely finished that thought before I began drifting off.